What's up guys, YST here and welcome back to another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today, I actually want to speak about my top 20 to 25 champions in raids that I feel do not require books in 2023. Now I'm sure that many of you guys are aware, books in this game are super hard to get, right? And when you're doing fusions, 2x events, 10x events, you may have a bunch of champions in your roster and thinking, which ones am I prioritizing my books on here? So in this list, I've kind of focused on ones where, of course, you do get a benefit from booking, but it's not to say that it's needed to book them in order to use them on your accounts. And that's kind of the main theme of this video. And if any of you think that I missed any that should have been on this list, in the comment section below, please voice your opinions because I'll be looking out for them as well. So I know that I don't need to book them as well. But these are ones that I've had personal experiences with, and they definitely do not need books in the ways that I'm going to discuss in this video. And guys, before we get into this, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We are trying to reach 20,000. And thanks for all of the support in 2022. You guys are amazing. And I hope that you had an amazing New Year's as well. Now, other champions that I'm not going to speak about, I'm going to give you one example. And it's going to be champions that don't need to be fully booked, but they may be partially booked. And that's not what this video is about. If you guys want me to make a video like that, let me know as well. So a perfect example would be somebody like a Manaya, right? I got very, very lucky in booking up the Beauty's Allure for the heals and the cooldowns. And I also got the 2 books on the passive skill here, right? For the cooldowns there. And this is the 2 things that I want the most because I used a Khoronar and I managed to avoid all of these books here. So if you get lucky with books on some abilities, you may just want a cooldown. You may just want damage output on a nuking skill. Then you can kind of avoid the other stuff around it just to try and mid-max the resources in your accounts. Well, I just wanted to throw that in there. But let's get right into the proper list. I do have a little notepad on the left, so I'm going to be referring to that throughout the video. So the first one is going to be Skytouched Shaman. Arguably one of the best passive healers in this game. And I use her in Iron Twins Fortress. I use her in PvP battles against Torment. I use her in Tag Team Arena. I use her in Revive and Death teams for Doom Tower, right? But if you just care about the passive heal of the Bloodstain Ritual, yes, you get a bit of value from the heals. But the main source of her healing is going to be coming from the amount of HP that she's lost. It's going to kind of heal according to that. So it's still going to be a very substantial heal without needing the books on this. And also in the arena, if all you care about is taking that first turn, you might have the immunity set on. Being able to just place a Mortal Skies once is all you're going to need in the arena if that's all you're needing it for. We're going to be removing the debuffs, blocking the debuffs, placing that Revive on Death, putting us in the best situation as possible. And if you need this to cycle round 4 turns, you're probably dead by then, if I'm honest, right? So the cooldowns is just not needed for Arena in particular. And if you're just using it Iron Twins, the main source is just going to be this passive, right? So really focus on it. Do you need to book it, or do you have the book spare to book up a Skytouched Shaman? But I personally booked mine, but I don't feel like you need to on this champion. Alright, so next one is going to be from the Demon Spawns. One that's probably one of the most wanted champions in this game. And it's going to be Allure. And the main reason why somebody will build out this champion is for 2 places in my personal opinion. That's going to be the Dark Fae, and it's going to be the Fire Knight's Dungeon because of the turn meter manipulation on the Psychic Whip ability. Now this will attack 3 times at random, so great for Giant Slayer procs. But if you pay close attention here, you get no buff values, meaning that you do not need to book this up in order to get that turn meter reduction by 25% on each critical hit. So this is very strong, right? Allows you to stop booking this champion, and if you want to start building dupes, you don't get rinsed off on your resources over like a CVC for the sake of it. Now, it's going to be nice for damage output, but that's not the main reason you're building Allure. You're building her for the turn meter reduction, and that's pretty much about it. Now, some may say you might want to have the extra chances for the sleep and stuff like that, or the damage output on the Hellfish Blaze. And I understand that for faction wars. But if you are just taking down bosses in particular, all you care about is locking off these 2 and just prioritizing the A1. So that'll be champion number 2. Now heading into the Undead Hordes, we're going to be going to a champion that I've never built personally, which I'm a bit upset by, if I'm honest. I might build her up over CVC. Make sure you guys join the stream tomorrow. Every Tuesday we like to do CVC on the channel. And basically the main thing about her is the Veins of Ice, because she instantly removes any freeze debuffs on this champion and replaces them with an increased crit rate, increased crit damage, and a strengthen whenever an enemy places a freeze debuff on this champion, right? So very, very strong, does not require books. On the lethal Winter will then fill this champion by 25% and instantly activates the Death's Majesty skill whenever this champion or an ally receives a freeze debuff. And that's going to lead into this one here. Now you do get an extra 25% chance for the decreased speed, and then you get some extra damage output by 15% with a cooldown. But because of the amount of times, like, you're going to be using this when you're facing freeze champions such as a Torment, in my personal opinion. And if this is on a 1-turn cooldown, this is going to be popping off so much that I don't feel like you need to book this up just for the damage, right? You're going to be dealing enough as it is, because you're getting extra buffs, allowing you not to need as much buffs on your champions. You're going to have an increased attack as well, adding to that attack stats, and then boom. You're going to be nuking down with this very, very consistently, and I don't personally feel like you need the books for this. And then on the A1, destroy the target's max HP by 30%. So if you're using this in Scarab King, for instance, if you just care about the max HP, there's no buff values here. It's just damage once again. So I would actually put this on my list as a champion that does not need books. Next up is going to be from the Dark Elves, and it's going to be a Void Legendary, or Void Epic should I say, but she should be a Legendary, in a Madame Serris. Now guys, ask yourself the question, what is the one ability that screams to mind when you pull a Madame Serris? It's going to be the Midnight Ritual, which can remove all buffs from all enemies, places that decrease attack and that drop defense on all enemies for 2 turns. Now, if you pay close attention here, there is no buff values, it's just cooldowns. And you do not need to wait 4 turns to recycle this to get this up again, because 9 times out of 10 you'll be using a Kaimar, if that's what you're kind of focusing on, to place it multiple times. But 9 times out of 10, you're going through, you're CCing, you're stripping, and then you're nuking. And that's kind of the traditional way to nuke down somebody in the classic arena. Also here, you get a bit of a buff value here, and that's okay. And then you get some damage output on the A1. But in hindsight, if all you care about is the Midnight Ritual, you do not need to book Madame Serris in your guys' accounts. Okay, the next one I'm going to do a group of champions. I'm not going to go through every single one. And you may have guessed it, it's going to be ally attack champions in this game. Now, one thing about ally attack champions is, if you're using it in clan boss and it's speed tuned, whether that be a Kreela, a Farrakhan, and you're trying to optimize damage with them, understandable, book your champions, it's going to get a great value. But if you're doing like the blender compositions in arena, or you're doing the Nishak Vermin Lord one-shot strategy that we did over the Bummel rotation, you do not need it, because stuff like this is, you don't need the cooldowns to do stuff like that. Because if you're doing a blender composition, you go first, you ally attack, you come through with your AoE abilities, and boom, they're going to be wiped out. But obviously, the true value from these ally attack champions for me is going to be coming from facing bosses in particular, or if you're just trying to optimize damage in clan boss or you're speed tuning with the cooldowns. So yeah, this one is a bit hit and miss depending how you use them. But if you're building up a bunch of ally attack champions, I don't see why you would need to book them, honestly, unless it's for clan boss. Next one is going to be Sinesha / AoE abilities. And once again, I'm going to put this in a category, and you guys can kind of take that same kind of theme elsewhere. Now, champions like Sinesha, yes, you do get a value because she puts target skills on cooldown, I understand. Then you get a bit of an extra heal value. But the equalizing of HP, if you're equalizing the HP of somebody with full HP, you do not need books for this, because yes, she does heal that target ally by the extra values here of the 10% of their max HP. But if she's equalizing the HP, she'll take the HP levels of all allies will be brought up to the level of the ally with the highest HP, right? So if she's doing that 9 times out of 10, you're not going to need to book this. Now, it's on a 5-turn cooldown once booked, so you're not getting a crazy value from cooldowns. And also, because she's doing all AoE abilities with the A1, you're going to get the true value from like taunting sets or stun sets, probably the main one, if you're not building it for damage in those blender compositions. Like the way that I use her is a stun set, take them down in faction wars, and boom. So it really just comes down to how you're using this champion. If you're using it in PvP, yes, you're going to want the extra damage stats. If you're using it in faction wars, or like somebody like a Bellower, for instance, and you don't need the debuffs because you've got other champions fulfilling those roles, I guess just think to yourself, I've got an AoE ability champion. Why am I using this? Am I putting them in there just for CC with stun sets? Or am I using them for damage? And then just kind of go from there to see if the book values is great for your accounts. So that's why I'm not going to cover every AoE attack champion, because it basically comes down to those two things. CC with stun sets, or you're going for full damage. Yes, book it for the damage output. Next one is going to be some Poison Explosion champions. We're going to start off with one that I use all of the time in Elhain. One of my most favorite champions in the game, if you've seen other lists that I've created about champions in this game. And basically, yes, A1, non-resistible burn, does not need books. A2 ability, damage increase and cooldowns, but you do not need books to place the poison debuffs, right? And that is the main source of what we're needing with an Elhain. Also, on the combustibilities, just cooldowns to deal the instant damage from poison. And I think this is remarkable, guys, because not needing to book up a champion, that's very strong, by the way, in taking down these dungeons in particular. I think it's amazing. And legendary skill tomes are so hard to come by. And to be able to not need books on a champion like Elhain is great. Honestly, guys. Because, yes, you may argue you want the cooldowns of an Elhain for once you come up against the boss, and I understand. But if you're building a Poison Explosion team, you're going to have a reset champion in there. You're going to have a Kaimar. So you do not need to focus on the pure value of a combustibility if you've got the resets in your teams, right? And not having any buff values, I think that's a plus for Elhain. And the second one will be a very similar thing with the Xayah. You do not need books for the Deadly Catalyst. And then this one does have a buff chances for the poisons. So it could be more of a value than the Elhain here on Xayah. But 9 times out of 10, you've got other champions to fulfill the poison role before she places the Deadly Catalyst. And if that is a team that you're looking to build and you're not relying on the poison of a Xayah, then yes, you will not need books for Xayah in these particular things. So very, very strong there. All right, so the next one is going to be a Vergis. Can I remember the faction? Probably not. Oh, man. Sacred Order? Where's Vergis? Is he a high elf? Oh, he is a high elf. Now, the thing with Vergis is great passive effects, right? Yes, you get the cooldowns, which is very, very strong, I understand. But apart from this one, this is like a partial booking thing, because having this on a one-turn cooldown is very, very strong. But you don't really need the other stuff. Like, you don't need the A1 ability. You don't need this one in particular, because the main place that I see a Vergis being used is the Scarab King for like solo strategies or in faction wars, because he's got a hefty aura in dungeons as well for progression. But if you can get lucky and just book this one out, I know I said I wouldn't mention partial champions, but I feel like this one definitely holds that value. Putting this down to a one-turn cooldown, if you get lucky, you can kind of avoid the rest of them. Now, he's not super intensive in terms of books, but I feel like the pure value does come from the second win passive, so I thought I'd just throw that in there. Next up is going to be Vrask from the Orc faction. Where are you, buddy? Vrask. Now, this champion has an amazing passive skill in Cannibalism, which can heal all allies by 10% of this champion's max HP whenever this champion inflicts a critical hit. Now, put him with 100% crit rate, you're going to be seeing the pure value of these heals every single time that he hits, right? So, attacks one enemy, fills this champion's turn meter by 20%, no buff chances, just damage once again. And then attacks one enemy, extra damage, and why would you need a cooldown on this? It makes no sense, right? So, yeah, the main source is just going to be the passive, get your heals out, build him with 100% crit rate, and he's straight out the packet, ready to rock and roll for your guys' accounts in 2023. All right, next champion, we're heading straight back into the High Elves, and it's going to be Lyssandra. Now, this is a champion I might have kind of made you took you by surprise, maybe, but it is kind of true because places a 30% increased speed on all allies for 2 turns and fills the turn meters of all allies by 30% and then decreases the turn meters by 30%. It will then lead into this one, which could fully deplete the target's turn meter. Now, can you guys see why I said that she will not need books in particular things? Because there's no buff chances. You're just fully depleting. You're just increasing and decreasing. And it just comes down to cooldown stuff once again. So if you're using in PvP and you're looking to just decrease and increase and then lead through and fully deplete, I don't feel like you need books for this champion. But if you're using it in somewhere like the Dark Fae or Fire Knight, yes, you may see a value of exhaustion and energize if you don't have multiple turn meter champions. Like the one we mentioned earlier, guys, in Allure. Like, if you're pairing both of them, I still don't feel like you need the books, honestly. Because this will still cycle round very, very quickly. As she's got a 24% speed aura, sorry. And you're going to build her fast at that 110 base speed. So, Lyssandra, one that I would recommend to book if you've got the books and you want to use her optimally. But I don't feel like you need the books for her to shine in this game, right? Next one is going to be in the Knights Revenant, and it's going to be a Doompriest. No, that's Rector Druff. Where are you, Doompriest? There she is. Now, Doompriest is very similar thing, guys, with the passives, because on the bolster, heals all allies by 7.5% of their HP and removes one random debuff from them at the start of this champion's turn. Now, all this champion needs to do is take a turn and you're getting the full value of bolster. She does have an increased attack, okay. She does have an A1 with some damage increase, okay. Now, the only time I would book this champion is potentially for clan boss teams, right? You're trying to cleanse the stuns, which you don't even need books for anyway. But if you're just trying to increase the attacks more consistently on a 3-turn cooldown, and then you're trying to do extra damage on the A1, that is the only time I would book a Doompriest, honestly, because the pure value is coming from this alone. So Doompriest definitely makes the list 100%. Now, this one you might have not seen coming, and it's somebody that I use on my account. And do you know what? I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. I'm going to come out of the index for this one, just to show the pure value of what I'm talking about. Ursuga Warcaller, where are you, buddy? Or should I say chick? There she is. No books, no books, no books, because you do not need it on Ursuga Warcaller as a void legendary champion. Now, what are you talking about, YST? Well, the main reason why somebody would use an Ursuga Warcaller in their team for Go Second Arena teams is decreases the damage of all allies receives from critical hits by 30%, and this champion will receive that damage instead, right? Now, if she does take a turn, like the way that I built this champion is 110,000 HP, no speed whatsoever, 142, a bit of resistance in there with a Guardian set because they're trying to soak up as much damage as possible, right? All you need to do is be alive, mitigate the damage as much as possible, and that's about it. If she manages to take an extra turn, yeah, she's going to lead in with the bottoms up once, and then if you're lucky, you might come through the barrel through, which has no extra buff chances, by the way, just damage. And if you're building it in this way, do you really need the cooldowns on a champion like this? I don't think so. I feel like you put her in your team, she sits there like a sitting duck, you place the bottoms up if she takes a turn, and then she's straight out of the packet, a great void legendary for your accounts. So I personally don't feel like she needs to book in this game. And I'm never going to book her, honestly. And I use her every day. She's in my arena defense and all sorts. Next up is going to be Vogoth from the Undead Hordes, and this champion has amazing passives. With the Eerie Presence, can attack, well, when attacked, places a leech debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Just from being attacked, guys, making this one of the most consistent leech debuffs in the game, right? Festering Dynamo, whenever this champion is attacked, will heal all allies by 50% of the damage received, but only 25% against boss attacks. So the main source of a Vogoth is just sitting there. Literally sitting there, and as you see with like Bummel teams and just surviving in clan boss, any bosses in general, or PvP battles, Vogoth is a pain to come across because of the heal values and the leeches, allowing you to heal by 18% of the damage inflicted. But if you do want to book it up for clan boss, yes, a mini Vizier effect on the A1, but I wouldn't say it's vital, and then some extra chances for the provokes. But I feel like the main source of using a Vogoth is the 2 passives on those abilities there. Next up is going to be a bomb champion, and I love bomb champions in this game, guys. And we're going to be talking about Astrolith. Where are you? Is she a Knights Revenant? Where's Astrolith? She's one of my most wanted champions, and I can't remember her faction. What's going on, YST? Astrolith, well, on her abilities, does not need books on this one here. And this one is guaranteed because it cannot be resisted, and it's just damage output. So if the way that you want to use this is just by placing the debuffs and then exchanging the HP levels, you do not need books for this champion in order for it to be effective. So very strong champion, but if you do want extra damage, of course, book up these skills on your Astrolith. Next up is going to be a free champion. And where is he? And it's going to be Drexhar Blood Twin. I believe it was from the Bazaar shop. You have to collect the coins or something, like 100 fragments. Now this champion, the pure value comes from the Fiery Blood, when has a 50% chance of placing a HP burn debuff for 2 turns on the attacker when hits. this champion's resistance will increase by 10 for every enemy under a HP burn debuff and stacks up to 50. Now, 55% chance, of course, you want to have this at a higher chance if you can. But being able to just bring this champion out and have a 50-50 shot at placing those burn debuffs on the attacker is actually very, very high without needing the book values. So definitely a champion I feel does not need the books, and that is the main source of why you would use a Drexhar Blood Twin in my personal opinion. So very, very strong, but of course, if you've got the extra books and you get lucky, you do get a lot of value from the books on this ability here. Next up is going to be Urost, one of the champions you can get from the Hard Doom Tower by collecting fragments. And I believe he's from the Undead Hordes as well. Yes, he is. Now, depending how you're using him, alright, this one's going to be very subjective. I'm going to say, if you are doing it just for Scarab King, like I feel like 99% of players do at the moment, Call of Cage, when attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Now, in those strategies where you're using a Urost in the Scarab King, you just want him to sit there, take as less turns as possible in a regeneration set, and just pop off those poisons until that boss is down in like 2 to 3 minutes. Now, you do get a bit of buff values from the Call of Cage from booking, but I still haven't booked mine on my account. I feel like I got the 5% chance and I stopped there. So I'm at like a 55% chance. And I solo farmed the Scarab King on the highest floor in about 3 minutes. So if that's what you're using him for, then yes, you do not need books, honestly. But he does have a lot of extra stuff in his kit where if you're using it elsewhere, you may see the value of books on your account. But for Scarab King, you do not need books on that champion, honestly. Next up is going to be in the Demon Spawn faction. It's going to be Mortu Macaab. And when you talk about Peril, does not need books, and he's going to be shining no matter what once his ability procs out, because he attacks one enemy 2 times, ignores shield, block damage buffs, and as well as defense, and enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. And as you see here, no cooldowns, no buff values, no damage increase. He's just sniping anybody in this game and knocking them out like Mike Tyson. So very, very strong. And also, there's no reduction on the fiery rage to proc. It's just a flat value of the 20% to fill this champion's Temio and stuff. If you do want to use the block buffs, of course, there's some buff values there. But I feel like the main source of him is going to be the Peril ability that does not need books whatsoever. And for a very similar reason, we're heading into the Bannerlords, and we're going to be talking about Baron. Now, if all you care about is Skypiercer ability, which is the A4, which is now an active skill instead of a passive unlockable skill, I guess, does an AoE and ignores shield, block damage buffs, as well as 50% of the target's defense. If all you care about is proccing Skypiercer, no books needed on this champion. Now, if you want to start getting extra damage out and cooldown reductions and stuff like that on his other abilities, yes, you may want to book him up as an endgame player. But 9 times out of 10, if you're wacky with Skypiercer, they're not going to see the next round, right? If he's built correct. So definitely doesn't need books if that's all you're using him for. Next one, I'm going to put Ronda into the mix. Now, I personally booked mine, and I do highly recommend to book against like maybe clan boss or specific stuff if you got the books to spare. But you're not getting so much value where it's like, wow, I need to book this champion today in 2023. Although she's free, she's still amazing and effective without those books, because there's no buff values for the passive block active skills or the passive skills, and will still ignore the shield buffs by 30% of the target's defense as well. You're just missing out on a cooldown and 20% damage. On the A1, she's still going to place those extra hits without a problem, as long as you meet the requirements. And then she's still going to attack all enemies 2 times. You're just missing out on some damage output by 20%. So I feel like you don't need the books, but if you've got the luxury of doing it, it's just a fun thing to see the numbers, I guess. But does she need to be booked, guys? Don't waste it on her, honestly. If you're progressing in this game, you've just got to run them for free by signing in for 7 days. Wait to pull more endgame champions and kind of focus it onto other champs. Because she's very niche in the way that you use her, and I don't feel like you need to book her to enjoy this champion anyway, honestly. Next one is going to be a bit of a controversial one. I'm not sure if you guys agree with me, but I'm going to go with Raglin on this one. Now, Raglin has been power crept over the years because she's one of the OGs, but she's still very effective. But a 3-turn cooldown for a revive an ally with 75% HP and turn meter, very, very strong. Now, she's one of the only champions in the game on a 2-turn revive with these kind of requirements in her kit, right? With the turn meter fill. So if you can book her, definitely get a lot of value for Miracle, but do you need it? Absolutely not. With this one, you get a bit of an extra heal value, but there's no cooldown reduction. So unless you care about the proportion of the heal, and you just care about the cleanses, there's no need to like book this up, right? And then A1, you don't care about damage at all. You just want to fill the turn meters. So I feel like Raglin's definitely a void legendary. You can get away with getting the full value of a kit without needing to book this champion. Next one is going to be in the Skinwalkers, and it pains me to say this. I'm sorry, Khoronar, but you're going on the list. Now, Khoronar, it's very subjective once again. Now, if you've got Manaya on the team, always counterattacks when hit with Manayas on the same team, right? Will then counterattack when hit by enemies under decreased attack, drop defense, or decreased speed, and he places 2 of these debuffs in his kit already. So if you're facing an Hydra boss, obviously there's no book values here anyway, just trying to explain the kit. But here, there's no buff values for placing the decreased attack, right? So, and it's on a 4-turn cooldown once you book it anyway, so you're not getting a crazy value from this 1-turn cooldown here, especially if you've got multiple decreased attack champions in your team. You do get a bit of a value from the A2, don't get me wrong, with the provoke debuff and the cooldown, but it really comes down to how you're using this champion, because the way that I use him is in a taunting set or provoke set. I think they changed the name. And if you're doing that, you're going to get provokes out regardless, and I feel like a 75% chance on a 4-turn cooldown is still very, very substantial, right? And if he's always counterattacking in that taunting set, I don't feel like he needs it, honestly. And in the arena, if you pair him with Manaya, he's going to be popping off all of those counterattacks leading into the A1 anyway, which doesn't have any buff values, it's just damage. So I guess if you're endgaming and you got books to spare, I booked my one. I feel like if you just want him as like a fun champion on the side, you want to use him like on a Tuesday or a Saturday for fun, I don't feel like you need to book a Khoronar in order to have a lot of fun with that champ. Next up is going to be somebody called Samar Gemcursed, and it's somebody that I've never used or have, or want to have, honestly. And if you talk about Bommel, all you care about is this passive where you can block incoming damage and places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever they receive a hit that would drop their HP below 30%. So that's kind of like the main value of this diamond skin ability, right? The rest of it is just icing on the cake. But honestly, from what I've been seeing, people just use this for Bommel and then they just carry on. So I'm not sure if he needs that many books. Next up is going to be Maulie Tankard, one of the Spirit Affinity Dwarf champions. And with the A2, with the Barb rule, yes, you can get a cooldown, but she places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn and has a 50% chance of placing a provoke. Okay. But there's no buff values here. You're placing the provoke anyway, and in the arena, proccing this once is more than enough. And if you need to wait 3 turns to get the provoke out again, you're probably dead already. So you're probably running a reset champion, or you're just placing the provokes once. Now you do get a burn on the A1, and you get a bit of cooldowns here, but I feel like the pure value is this. And if you need a revive, you can still proc this, right? So yeah, I don't feel like she needs books to shine, but if you do have the books, you might just want to throw a couple in there, I'm not too sure. But I feel like she's still very strong without it. Next up is going to be one that you might not have expected as well, from the Knights Revenant faction. Oh my god, I don't know my champions. It's from the Dark Elves, what am I talking about? It's going to be Vizier Ovelis. And if you're using strictly for the Demon Lord clan boss and nowhere else, the A1 ability with the Accursed Blades, very, very strong without books, okay? Now, you do get a 50% chance once booked to increase the duration of all debuffs by 1 turn, which is a huge increase, by the way. But if you're running him in those counter-attack teams, ally attack teams, you're blocking off the A3 and A2 with presets, because you don't get a true value of these from the clan boss, 35% chance is still substantial, guys, honestly. So if you can actually still get away with getting him straight out the packet, put him in your clan boss team, and you're still going to see a great value as long as you block off those other 2 abilities. Because he's attacking 3 times and 35% chance is still very, very high in this game. Our final champion on this list is going to be in the Bannerlords, and it's going to be a solo Bommel champion in Lady Annabelle. A big shout out to Cold Brew. So with the Red Lady passive, heals this champion by 50% of their max HP whenever an ally or an enemy dies. So when the Dread Bombs prop, they're classed as enemies, they're not classed as bosses, because Bommel is the boss. She's basically healing by the values of those. She's got extra heals and stuff in her kit from like the A1 ability. And you don't really need books, guys, right? Not at all. So definitely a champion that you don't need to book, but if you want to get extra values of leeches, put it up to 100% chance, of course, you guys could book that champion. But guys, that kind of wraps up for my list. I'm not sure how many there was there today, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if there was any champions that I did miss out, that I didn't mention, please let me know in the comment section below. And we will be starting a free-to-play series as of tomorrow alongside some other content creators. So make sure you guys drop a sub so you don't miss out on that series, because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to starting again and trying to see where we could take these new shiny accounts. Happy New Year's to everybody once again, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.